Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Emily, and as you probably saw when you clicked on this video, today I'm going to do my mid-year book tags, so basically my mid-year wrap-up. So I picked like not too many questions to go through. I have done a quarter of the year wrap-up that talked about a lot of books, but I figured we're halfway point. I waited till the end of June to film this just because I wanted to completely be done with 6 months to have my answers for you guys. So we'll start with how many books I've read so far. I've read 134 books as of the end of June in 2024, and I don't know the breakdown of the genre. Maybe I'll put it here, but I've had a lot of good reads. I haven't had too many 5 stars, but I think I've had a lot of books within like the 4-star range, which is great. But to start off with my favorite book so far of 2024, first half of 2024, it is Heartless Hunter by Kristin Ciccarelli. This book took me by surprise. I got it in the book of the month. I had kind of had my eye on it because I saw that it was coming out and I was reading about it, and then when it was a book of the month option, I immediately selected it. But this is a witch and witch hunter romance. It is a YA novel, so there is not really spice in it, which was also shocking that I enjoyed this book that much without like any spice. But the romance is a true enemies to lovers. You have Rue, who is basically working to get these witches freed that are being hunted, but at the same time she's like a socialite in the town, so nobody really suspects her. And then you have Gideon, who's like the witch hunter, who is trying to figure out who they call her the Crimson Moth is. So I'm obsessed with this book so much. I cannot wait. The second book comes out, I think, beginning of 2025. I want to say like February. I cannot wait. It is probably my most anticipated read as of this moment for next year. And that is saying something because we may see a new ACOTAR book next year. We are going to be seeing a new Fourth Wing book next year, but I am most excited about the sequel to this book. The best sequel that I read this year, without a doubt, is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I actually read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom in the past 6 months, but this was quite possibly the best second any other book in a series that I have read in a long time. We followed the same 6 characters from the first book, but we're following them after the heist that took place there and the fallout of that and all the other things that are going on in the world that they're trying to deal with. And I can't talk obviously too much about the plot, but without a doubt, best sequel that I've read so far this year, Crooked Kingdom. I'm gonna try my hardest not to repeat books on here, so like while for this next one, I could have repeated Heartless Hunter, I chose a different book. So for my most anticipated release for this first half of the year, that's been my favorite that I've actually already read, it is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This shocked me. I've only read one other Riley Sager book. It was House Across the Lake, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. This book was well-rounded. It had a very good plot. It had enough like questionable things going on to make you wonder exactly what was going on without being too apparent. What actually happened at the end I didn't see coming, and I liked that it was not the type of ending that we saw with House Across the Lake. If you've read it, you may know what I'm talking about. Thriller novels to me should be realistic enough that that's what scares me. This definitely was, because I read this book as well as Megan Miranda's a new book, Daughter of Mine. Like I read these back to back, and they're both kind of like creepy, somebody else might be in your house kind of vibes, and probably wasn't the best thing to read back to back. But this was the second one I read, and it actually impressed me even more, which says something coming from a book that had the similar vibes. But definitely pick this one up if you're a Riley Sager fan. It's my favorite of the 2 that I've read by him. I have like 4 of his other books. I just haven't read them yet, but this was definitely an excellent read. I may not have like put Crescent City or Iron Flame there. Those are books I was really expecting to like, so I kind of just did, for that one, books that I wasn't really anticipating liking, because I did not rate that as high as those ones, but for being an anticipated release, it really surprised me. And now the anticipated release for my second half of the year, new release that came out before the end of the month that I actually have already read, but at the point in time of cutting off at the June time frame, I hadn't read, was A Novel Love Story. So that was the most anticipated book that I had not read by the end of June that I was expecting to love. So I will talk about that in my wrap up for July, as well as like I'm sure it'll come up in a favorites video later in the year. Most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. Alex Astor has the next book in the Lightlark series coming out in November, and I'm actually very excited for that. That series took me by surprise. It is not my favorite series of all time, but it is definitely enjoyable, and Nightbane ended off with a cliffhanger. So I do want to see where it's going to go. I don't even know how many books this series is going to be. I can't find that information anywhere, but this will be the third one, and it is called Skyshade. Very excited for that release. And Daydream, which is the third book in the Maple Hill series, comes out at the end of August, and that is probably like the romance book that I'm most looking forward to. I think all of the thrillers that I was looking forward to, I'll released prior to the end of the year. I know there's one coming out right at the beginning of the year, but that's 2025, so I can't add that here. So that's why I just did a romance and a fantasy. Biggest surprise. I'd have to say that This Veiled Kingdom by Holly Renee really surprised me. It is a enemies to lovers fantasy romance that follows your typical, like, there's a rebel gang trying to overtake the king and his people, and our main character gets tied up with the son of the leader of the rebellion. Yes. And they don't know, like, how close her ties are with the king. When they find her, they just take her because she has a rebellion tattoo and they didn't want to leave her and have her be killed. So she ends up training with them and everything. And there's this big reveal at the end of the book that will lead well into the next book, which I believe comes out at the end of July, and that is The Hunted Heir, I believe. I have not been able to get this book physically because I can buy it on Amazon, but I've been looking for it in stores. I can't find it anywhere. So I'm probably just gonna have to purchase it on Amazon. I don't even know that you can purchase or pre-order The Hunted Heir yet. It's just, I think, a Kindle book right now. I did read that on Kindle Unlimited. I think it still is on Kindle Unlimited. That book shocked me. It was just kind of one that I picked when I was on vacation to read so that I didn't have to take a book, and I really, really enjoyed that. It was a very, very well-written enemies to lovers. They still hate each other, even though they know there's an attraction there. There's still so much hatred, which also reminded me a little of The Heartless Hunter. Maybe that's just my vibe this year. Not sure. But definitely enjoyed that. And then I also have to say, These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong really surprised me with how much I liked it. It's a Romeo and Juliet reimagining and takes place in like 1920s Shanghai, and it's these two rival gangs. And I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the characters, and I am looking forward to, I did just buy Our Violent Ends because I was waiting for it to come out in paperback to match this one, and it just came out in paperback in June, so I picked that up. And I will be reading that very, very, very soon because I do want to see how this duology ends. But if you like romances that have to do with like mafia gang kind of vibes, but you also like a little bit of fantasy sprinkled in, definitely try this if you haven't. I mean, I think it's talked about a lot, but I'm not sure how many people actually read it. It is really good. My favorite new to me author is definitely Kristen Cicerelli. She is the author of The Heartless Hunter, and I also read Edgewood by her, which is it's a standalone fantasy that's on Kindle Unlimited that was very unique. It was about a girl that was from this town that had like this elf king rule the forest, and you had to pay like a tithe to him constantly, and she tries to get out of this town, and she's a singer, and every time she sings, nature grows around her. She's almost like Snow White, but instead of calling animals to her, like trees grow. It's weird, but this like mystery underlying story part of it to figure out like why that happens to her and how it's tied back to her hometown. And her grandfather goes missing, so she goes back to her hometown to try to find him because she's pretty sure that the elf king stole him. And then she ends up like obviously trying to rescue him and meeting different people along the way, and there is a romance. It was so good. It was so unique. Definitely looking forward. She has another series out called The Last Namasara, I think. It's a 3-book series, and I do have it in my like wish list on Amazon, and I will probably end up getting that once I finish some other series that I'm reading. But her writing is very beautiful and very imaginative and different from other things that I've read recently. Newest fictional crush. I have 2. We'll talk about Garrett Graham first. I read just the first book so far in the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy. And Garrett Graham, there's just something about this boy. I love hockey too, so it helps that he's a hockey player. But just the way he treated Hannah and just like how he dealt with her and like how amazing he was with her, and I just love him. And I've also listened to the audiobook of The Graham Effect, so I do know how he eventually is with his daughter. And I listened to that before this one. It did not ruin this experience for me at all, but I just think that might have had something to do with it as well. But I loved this book so much. I have the rest of the series to read now, and I can't wait to get through it. And another romance series that I've actually finished, that my second fictional crush was Reckless by Elsie Silver, Theo Silva. That's all I'm gonna say. He is perfect. Elsie Silver has a tendency to make me like tropes that I don't typically like. I am not a single parent, and I'm not a surprise pregnancy girly. But those were my two favorite books. Heartless and Reckless were my two favorite books in the Chestnut Spring series. And then I just read Wild Love, which is a single dad trope. Loved that too. So I don't know what it is and how she writes it, but she writes a good single dad. Book that made me cry. I do not cry a lot at books. I have one, but I can't think of another book that did it, which is why this is the only one that's come to mind. I do get emotional. I just don't cry a lot. The book that did that for me was The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This was such a unique, fun story. It is like essentially Willy Wonka for those of us that love books. And the ending and how it like all came together, like it shocked me. It was like the last 30 pages of the book I was crying. It's not sad, it was just an emotional ending, and I really enjoyed it. I did end up just getting her new release, which was The Lost Story, I believe. It is a book of the month as well, so I'm very much looking forward to reading that because this was just such a fun, easy, quick read, but it was just something that has stuck with me even since reading it. Book that made me happy. This one was kind of hard too, because happy as in like I really enjoyed it, or happy with just like it made me giggle the whole time. I'm gonna say that like I could put Heartless here, but I'm also gonna talk about another one. Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher, the first book in her Lakefront Billionaire series. This book made me just so happy and I loved every second of it. It follows Julian and Delilah, and they are like childhood friends that had a falling out, and then she comes back to town, and from there like a romance obviously erupts, but just like their bickering and the way they talk to each other, but just their bickering and the way that like their families played into this whole thing. Like I loved the family dynamics of this book. And then I have also since read Love Unwritten, which is in this world as well and has the same familial characters in it. And I enjoyed that as well for the family aspect. So I think it was just the overall vibes of this book. Like I just felt so good reading it. I loved it. And I actually do want to like reread this at some point to see if that feeling still stays. But this was the one book that stuck out to me as something that I was just like happy the entire time I was reading it, even though there were aspects of that book that were quite sad. Most beautiful books that I have bought/received, and I have to go grab them. And I'm back. So A Novel Love Story, I said I wasn't going to repeat books, but this cover is absolutely gorgeous, and I did purchase it before the end of June, so it does count for a first half of the year purchase, even though I did not read it at the time that June ended. But like the neon colors and just the way that everything pops on this cover, I just think is absolutely gorgeous. And this blue is one of my favorite colors ever. I love this shade of blue, so that probably also played into it. And then like I'd say a special edition that I got earlier this month was The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Levenseller. And this is gorgeous. It has sprayed edges. It has like the ribbon to keep your place, all of that stuff. The cover itself is just absolutely gorgeous. It's shiny, so it's hard to see. But then the there's nothing on the back, but the naked hardback is beautiful as well, and the end page is gorgeous. I really liked this book. I did see it. I've been wanting to read this book, and then I saw that they were coming out with a special edition that matches the second book that's coming out. I actually should be getting that in a few days, which is, I can't remember. I'll pop it up. But I just thought this was gorgeous, and it's like deep, dark, gothic colors, and I think that's stunning. Book I want to read by the end of the year is I already kind of talked about it, and that is Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. That is the second book in the These Violent Delights duology. That is definitely a book I'm going to try to read very, very soon now that I actually have it. So that was the one that I thought of that I'm most excited to read by the end of the year that I already own. I have had 4 5-star reads so far this year. The first was Iron Flame. I know not everybody agrees with that, but I did love Iron Flame. The second, again, something that a lot of people don't agree with, was the third Crescent City book, House of Flame and Shadow. I loved that. And Heartless Hunter was another one. You think I'd remember all of my 5-star reads. Crooked Kingdom. That was my 4 5-star reads. So I've had one since then. It already should be out in a vlog. So I do have now 5 5-star reads for 2024, but the first half of the year, I only had 4. Books that I've been putting off that, again, I own. The first would be Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and it's not because I'm scared of it. I'm actually very excited to read that book, but it's just another series, and I only have that one, so I'd have to buy the rest of them. Just been kind of putting it off because I'm trying to finish other series, even though I've been starting some other ones in the meantime. I think next year's gonna be like my year for reading book series that I'm scared of, which ties into the next one, which is Mistborn: The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I, again, only have that first book. I really want to read a Brandon Sanderson novel. I just bought Tress of the Emerald Sea by him because it is a standalone, and I'm gonna read that first to make sure I like his writing. I'm pretty sure they're gonna be very different vibes, but I've heard good things about, obviously, the Mistborn series in general, but I do want to read Tress. Maybe by the end of the year. That might be another one that I really want to read by the end of the year. I just bought it today though, so I didn't have it on this list when I made it. Definitely excited about those books, but they've definitely also been books I've been putting off. So the last 2 questions here. Books I enjoyed that had mixed reviews. The first one I can think of is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I really enjoyed this book. I definitely thought it was less romance and more fantasy, and I enjoyed that. There was a lot more, like the world building we didn't get in Divine Rivals, we got in this book, but I still really liked this. It wasn't a 5-star read for me, but I still enjoyed this, and I know a lot of people did not. But I think that there are people out there that feel like me, so that's the mixed reviews part of it. And the other book I just read, and that was The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I've come to discover that I think Lucy Foley is one of those authors that you either love or you hate. And for me, that's like Lisa Jewell. So many people love Lisa Jewell's writing. I have read 3 of her books. I have not liked them. So I'm done with her. But I think people are like that as well with Lucy Foley. She writes a very specific type of thriller. And if it's not something that tickles your fancy, you're not going to like it. But I really enjoyed this. It was, again, in typical Lucy Foley fashion. You're following multiple different point of views for something that happened. It's a short span of time. It's in like close quarters. And while it didn't, I don't think was shocking, the way it was written and like what happened and all the little twists and ties that she has in there, that's why I like her books, because she connects all the characters in ways that you just don't see coming. So I enjoyed this one. Again, not a 5-star read, but I have seen very mixed reviews about it, but I really liked it. And then 5-star predictions for the second half of the year. I have 2. One I've already read and it was a 5-star, and that was Reckless by Lauren Roberts, which is the second book in the Powerless trilogy. And the second one I have high hopes for is A Monsoon Rising, which is the second book in the Hurricane Wars. I don't know how many books this is going to be, by Thea Guanzon, and I'm very excited for that book. That comes out in like, I think, November, but I'm very excited for that book. I enjoyed that story. It was very Star Wars-esque to me. There was a lot of Star Wars themes in it, and I love Star Wars. So that book, I'm very excited to see how that story takes off. So those are all the questions I'm going to answer. If you have any other ones that maybe I missed, you can ask below in the comments. I'll just respond back. But I've been very happy with my reading year so far. I don't know that I'll read as many books in the second half of the year as I did in the first, but who knows? I thank you if you've made it this far, and I hope to see you all in the next video.